Hey guys, it's Nicole Eaton with the Rock Your Soul book and podcast, where we talk about how to hack your mindset, grow your intuition, and live your best life. You can support this podcast by subscribing, leaving a positive review, and screenshot and sharing on social media. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Soul podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, author of the book Rock Your Soul, the Down to Earth Guide to Mastering Your Mind and Soul Therapist. We're back with another episode with guest Heather Maio. She is a self-optimization facilitator, two-time gym owner, and host of the Magic Mindset podcast. I have loved having her on each month, and I hope to continue to have her on each month because I think she just brings some incredible insight into the mind, into the body and soul. So here we go. So hi, Heather. Welcome back. I've loved having you on every month, I have to say.
I love it too. I love these conversations.
This is such a gift to my audience, and just I love the way we kind of are able to complement each other and feed off of each other energy. And I think today is going to be awesome for the time of year because today we're talking about like manifesting your next step
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of reaching your goals, identifying like what you want. But I feel like today is super special for this time of year because I always get like this crazy boost of energy in September. Do you feel that?
Same. I think it's just in our DNA since, that back to school it's the start of a new year, right? And so I just feel like we get that push of, okay, fresh things, fresh beginning. And especially I know, you have a little different weather than I do, but here up north,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, the leaves are falling. And so we are coming into a period of really, I feel like kind of laying the foundation of what is to bloom in the upcoming months.
Absolutely. And I do think you're right with the weather. Like the weather is still pretty hot here. But I think the routine of back to school has me coming more inward of I need to be more productive or organized, or I'd like to be anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so just getting that energy of getting more organized, getting more productive in my life. But I think when summer is there and everyone has off or is doing their own thing, that you're so externally distracted by the weather and the beach and the fun, and you kind of let your routines and the things that keep you building momentum slide out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think everybody, as much as we love free time and to have kind of, that nice slow down pace, I think there's a good portion of us, myself very much included, that really understand we function better in some form of structure and routine. And coming back to that always feels it never feels constricting to me. It feels like, okay, this actually is more freeing because I have something to kind of lean into to keep me, like you said, into the habits that I know add benefit to my life.
Absolutely. And I think I think people feel happier when they feel like they're making progress in their
Yes.
lives. And I think that it's hard to make progress when you're not even internally aware of what's
The next
been
steps are.
going on because you've
Mhm.
been so externally busy. So even if you're not a routine person, because I know some people feel trapped by routines or they feel like they end up going through the motions of a routine. So if you're one of those people who's like, I'm not a routine person, even just coming back to that energy of, okay, what do I need today, this morning, this week? Just that internal awareness of checking in with yourself will help what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. Finding, it doesn't need to be structured. I love that you said that because you're right. We are all so different, but just having the awareness, okay, maybe it for you, it doesn't look like every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to do XYZ, but still having the awareness of, okay, these are the handful of things that when they happen at some point during my week, I feel my best. And when they happen doesn't really matter. But again, just having that awareness of, okay, what is going to help serve me? What is going to help elevate me? What do I need to get done? And then however that fits in, whether that be structured or just completely flow, I don't think that matters. It's just the awareness, right?
Well, and just from like a practical standpoint, I think that sometimes we get overwhelmed with what we want to become, who we want to become, and how the hell do we get there? But we really underestimate the little tiny things that we can do that make a difference. Even just something as simple as it's my goal to read more this month. I used to read
Mhm.
a ton. It's something that makes me feel really good, adds to my work, like that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes to read. and that is, that is what I'm doing. And you can get a lot read in 10
Oh,
minutes.
yeah.
And then if you have time or energy, you can, go past that. And if you don't, you're like, okay, well, at least I did that. And so I think part of building like trust within yourself is, and part of why routine works is not only that momentum, but just there is power in making and keeping promises
Yeah.
to yourself.
Absolutely. That self-efficacy piece is huge, huge. That's something I struggled with a lot in my past of, knowing that things needed to happen or I wanted to do things or I wanted to be a person who, fill in the blank here, but then never doing them. And like you said, like we so underestimate the value of little things. And, I tell folks all the time at the gym, they say, well, I can't come to the gym because I don't have an hour. Okay, well, do you have 15 minutes? Because 15 minutes is better than 0 minutes. And we that applies to all things, right? Like we forget that in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever little pockets of time we have, those add up to huge things. And really, the main thing is that, like you said, creating the self efficacy, creating that self trust of I am a person, I show up for myself. And 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes. And just keeping, greasing that groove over and over. It's huge.
I love that you said I show up for myself because I think that's such a perfect teeter into manifestation because I think a lot of people think manifestation has to be these big epic things. Oh, I'm going to win the lottery or I'm manifesting a new job or a new car. And the most incredible life-changing part about manifestation is really like manifesting these little steps of who you are in the day, who you are in the world. I know we talked a lot about this in a couple other episodes, but do you believe you are someone who shows up?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
if you were? What if you like would you act differently if you were someone who shows up? Would you feel? Would you present differently? Would you dress differently? Would you
Oh, yeah.
commit differently? Would you wake up earlier? What would happen if you were someone who showed up into your life?
Yeah. I feel like for me, I always remember the maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline. Like that was like
Yes,
the
yeah.
catchphrase.
Yes.
I feel like that around manifestation. Like maybe she manifested it or maybe she worked her ass off for it. I don't know what one it is, but I feel like they're equally important because just like what you said, we have to be willing to show the universe we can handle what we're asking for, right? So I can't say I want to be a best-selling author and then never write a book. Like, like so
Absolutely.
I have to be willing to I know you're in it with me too. You've already started that process like so it's like you had to sit down every day. You had to show up for that. And so did you manifest your amazing book into existence or did you work for it? Arguably, maybe both, but they're so important. And like you just said, it's the daily little tasks. It wasn't the big picture. It was what you committed to do every single day that brought it into existence.
And I also believe that it's easier when we decide like there's a lot I had to do around so I don't know if you know the story about my first book.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So my first book I had sent to an editor who did more she did different kinds of editing for a bigger publishing company and she sent my book back and like tore it apart. And obviously editors are meant to do that, like they're
Yeah.
meant to do that. But she tore it apart in a way that left me feeling like who was I to write this damn book?
Hmm.
Maybe I have no writing skills at all. It was really it was a really defeating feeling to get this book back. And so I had in my head and I honestly didn't touch this book for almost probably 8 months. And so I had in my head I'm like maybe I'm not a writer, you know?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I started telling myself that story of I'm not a writer. I don't write well.
Hmm.
I don't, whatever the case might be. And I had a really good conversation with my husband at one point, and he was like, okay, so grammatics aren't your thing. Like, that's fine. That's why you hire an editor so
Yeah.
that you can have the idea and the flow of the idea and the point and have someone help you shape that in a way that is more readable or more grammatically correct or more whatever. And so it took me a while to like come back to that. No, I am a fucking writer. I
Yeah.
am a writer. I get
Yeah.
to be a writer. I get to be a writer because I have this information in me that needs to come out. And so I think part of that next like manifesting your next step is identifying the blocks that are keeping you from reaching it. And so mine went from, oh yeah, I'm writing this awesome book to, oh shit, maybe I'm not a writer to reclaiming that for myself of no, I get to be a writer. I get And, like, one of my favorite things about writing Rock Your Soul was all of the incredible feedback I still get. Like, I don't even
Yeah.
promote my book that often, and I'll get strangers who DM me on Instagram who found me from buying my book on Amazon, and just the way it's impacted or changed their lives, and I'm like, "Okay, so even if I were to change one life or somebody would get one line that helped them think differently, that was fucking worth
It's
it."
worth it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you said it's about finding the blocks, because that's another thing I feel like isn't talked about enough in this space. Like manifestation is like all like, look at these trips and look at this, it's stuff and it's power and it's acclaim. But like really that's a huge thing I'm realizing, or, realized in working through, is it's really figuring out like what is keeping you stuck so you can take it apart. Because again, like, same thing, same story, my spelling is atrocious, it is downright atrocious, and so that's always something that comes up to me, for me again, with my own book, like, oh my goodness, I can't be an author, I can't even spell, like, how does this,
Absolutely.
but then it's remembering, like, just what you said, like, it doesn't fucking matter what, like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm here, I'm a storyteller. And so how does this look, and whatever, but understanding those blocks, and my lens is obviously the gym, and I have people come in and they're like, this is what I want, but I'm not healthy and I'm not motivated and I'm not dedicated. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait, how did these things are never going to work together? Stop saying that story. From here on out, you are now a healthy person with healthy habits. Let's start like that unlearning is just so important into stepping into that, not next version of yourself, but that higher version of yourself, I feel like.
And even taking, and I think that's where we marry manifestation and inspired action, because when we are shutting ourselves down before we are moving forward, when we're saying, I'm not a writer, maybe I'm not built for writing, I suck at spelling,
Mhm.
we're creating blocks for inspiration, because I
Yeah.
truly believe when we're in alignment, and when we're in alignment mentally and action wise, that's where we know what to do. Like, that's where the next step comes in, is when we're open to receiving that information. If I say I'm not a writer, where does that inspiration have any fucking room to come in?
Yeah. Oh,
It
exactly.
doesn't. It
Exactly.
doesn't have any room to come in if I don't believe that I'm even remotely capable of doing this with my life. And so when we start to approach a goal in our life, or a next step or a next phase or a next version of ourselves, we have to be willing to open ourselves up to identifying the things we believe that aren't going to allow us to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that's so important, because like you said, we don't talk about the blocks to manifestation. We just make it really flowery.
Yeah.
But I think there is that important time where you have to sit down and just say, what's under the surface? Like, what is keeping me? If I were successful in this, what would happen? And sometimes we do have that underlying fear of, if I get this,
What does
who
it
will I
look like?
become? What does it look
Yeah.
like? What does it say about me? What if I don't feel any better when I get there? What if I fail after I do, I'm successful? Like, there is so much weird shit we have ingrained in us that we don't even know is ingrained until we sit
Yeah.
down and like hold space for it.
Unpack it. And I mean, there's two things there. Like the whole what if thing. It's like how you and I said we were on the same wavelength with that. Like we are so quick to spiral down the what if path that we forget that that has an opposite side to the coin. Like, what if everything goes right? And we don't even, historically, and again, especially women, we don't even dare to think about the what if of everything working out amazingly. What if everything fell into place? What if, I became that person, and like, what would that look like? And I feel like personally, that's how I manifest, is I daydream. I daydream about the what if in the positive form, and just allow myself to see what that looks like and what does it feel like. And, what if, who, like you said, who am I when I am being that person? But on the other side of that, on the negative side of that, which is scary, I think instinctually, a lot of us know, okay, if I am becoming that person, that means death to a lot of who we are too. Things holding us
Yeah.
back. Like I had to really examine, like, okay, if I'm going to do this with my life, I had to, look at my relationships with people, with food, with alcohol, with all these things. And it was like, that's uncomfortable. And but we have to be willing to look at, okay, what do I need to take out from my life? Because, sometimes, unfortunately, what keeps us comfortable is also keeping us stuck. And it's creating awareness around those things, which isn't so fun when you're in it. But then when you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh my God, thank God I'm free. You just don't realize it, right?
It's interesting. I was reading How to Do the Work by Dr. Nichole. She's
Hmm.
the holistic psychologist on Instagram, if you follow her. So she was talking about how us being comfortable is actually like an evolutionary piece. So our comfort is based on if we know what to expect, we don't have to worry about perceived threats.
Yeah.
And our negativity bias is really about looking for perceived threats in our environment. So we have a natural predisposition based on evolutionary safety to look for the negative.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with you if you're somebody who's like, oh, I'm like spiraling a lot or I think negative thoughts. It's nothing wrong with you. You are evolutionarily predisposed. I don't know a ton of people who wake up and just think positive thoughts all day. I
Yeah.
really don't.
It's
And I do.
impossible.
It's not how we're programmed. It's not how we, whatever. We obviously can do a lot of work to make that more frequent,
Hmm.
but our job is just to give possibility and attention to all of it rather than just the negative what ifs. Like I said on the post I did the other day, if you ask your brain a question, it will be forced to answer. Ask
Hmm.
better questions.
Yes. Yes. And like you said, be willing to look at all of it. Allow yourself to examine the negative. Like that's like we're humans. We are made to do that. And I don't. And certainly said this in the past, like dress rehearsing disaster. And I don't like to think of it because, like you said, we can't get angry at ourselves for doing what we are genetically programmed to do. Look for threats. Like we can't get mad at ourselves for that. But I feel like we need to also be aware that to be truly kind to ourselves, we need to examine the opposite, however that looks. And so if I'm going to spend 10 minutes spiraling about what could go wrong, I need to give myself some time to think about what could go right too. It's only fair, right?
And it's giving yourself giving yourself a chance. There's no amount of worrying that will prepare you for a negative event.
Right.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing will prepare you for the actual experience of a negative event other than it just wasting your time in the meantime. So when we start to give ourselves a chance to hope forward and to feel inspired and to choose to be willing to believe different possibilities for ourselves, I think that's like where we really shine. And I think possibility is the key fucking word here.
Yes, it's understanding like the unknown is terrifying. We can all acknowledge that. The unknown is completely terrifying, but the unknown is also where all the possibilities live, right? Like that is where all the good things live too. That is where all the things that our wildest dreams could come true. And so we need to be kind of equally excited about it or be really wild and maybe even get a little more excited about the possibilities of all the amazing things that could happen. And like I feel like our bodies, like we don't know the difference between fear and excitement, really. They feel almost the same. And so like that's something I use for myself a lot when I'm feeling a lot of fear. It's like, okay, how can I, is this excitement too? How can I channel this into excitement? How can I look at this from a different perspective? Where is the possibilities here? What is something I could learn? What is something I could grow? How could, and like, and it's not spiritually bypassing, because I know that's an argument that gets brought up a lot in this space. I don't view it like that at all. I view it as being pragmatic. I view it as being a problem solver, right? It's just changing yourself from a victim into, okay, no, I'm actually going to examine this and I'm going to see where I can gain some power and gain some control so I don't feel so anxiety ridden or, out of control. Just looking at things differently.
If you watch the Olympics, they talk about this all the time. Like when you see an interview with an Olympian, they will say, they're like, are you nervous? And every single one of them will say, no, I'm really excited. I'm so
Hmm.
excited every single time, because you're absolutely right. The physiological sensations are exactly the same between fear and excitement. And the thoughts are the only different part. So if we can literally take any of this and just think about, how do I feel a little better throughout my day? It's not necessarily bypassing if we can connect with it and if we can honor the spaces where those harder emotions do come up. And that's what we're talking about blocks. We're talking about the real stuff that I can't just override every negative thought with this, but can I start to shift some of the negative thoughts with some other opportunities of ways to think about it?
Yeah, yeah, just being willing to look at it from a different perspective and getting comfortable doing that, which, I feel like we both can fully admit at first, it's a challenge. It's work. It feels weird. It feels different. But the more you do it, it can become a subconscious process. It can become a habit. Like you will find yourself automatically not, stopping yourself from spiraling and going, oh no, let me think about this a different way, or let me, really examine this without having to really put that much thought into it. It's just getting that initial awareness around, whatever, like you said, going back to the beginning, those small daily tasks, like just committing to, I'm going to be more present with my thoughts today. I'm not going to believe everything I think because half of it's bullshit, like just creating some little shifts and letting them compile.
Well, and I'm going to be more present with my thoughts today is such a beautiful manifestation. And again, we don't always equate manifestation with the smaller in between thoughts. But if
Mhm.
we started to, then we could look at the things that we're feeling down and out about and that we're feeling heavy about and that we're feeling like we're failing. And we can start to say, okay, what is the thought there?
Yeah.
Is the thought that maybe I'm not lovable or I'm not likable? What would be something that may get me out of this? I choose to be willing to believe that I'm worth loving. I choose to be willing to believe that people naturally like me. I choose to be willing to believe whatever those areas or blocks that are coming up, just identifying them and giving yourself like space and permission to manifest them, because
Yeah.
when we're in that manifestation phase, we're not only getting help from our brain, but we're also getting help from, and I just deeply believe we're getting help from the universe.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. I feel like it's that quote we talked about it last time. When you want something, the whole universe conspires to give it to you. Like that is a belief I feel hugely. And I feel like, I've had my own experiences with this where I'm living in a house I manifested for myself and I didn't know it at the
Same.
time, right? Right?
Same.
Like I had no idea I was doing it at the time. My career, like there's so many things in my life that I 1,000% brought into existence that maybe I wasn't even consciously trying. I wasn't consciously at that time because I wasn't aware of it, manifesting. But I'm looking back at the practices I did and it's like, well, no shit. I was loudly speaking to the universe and I was showing up for it. Like, of course, these things happened, but like, I like the emotion. And I feel like for me, that's a huge piece. It's like, allow yourself to daydream and feel like, well, it's one thing to know what you want, it's another thing to experience what it feels like. And I feel like that's where maybe people get a little unsure or turned off, or just like that it maybe even seems a little too out there. But like, think about this in another perspective. That's us being kids and literally like playing dress up or make believe. Like we know how to do it. We just stop allowing ourselves to think in that like free fashion of just entertaining. Okay, what would that feel like should I be a person who whatever. And then once we have the blueprint of what that feels like, I'm a person who treats my body with kindness. Well, then we can start in actually doing it. Like, and that's when shit gets really cool. But we can't do it when we have no idea what it feels like or what it looks like, right?
I always have a hard time with people who are like, well, I'm a realist and that just doesn't seem probable. How do you handle people who are in that type of mode and mindset?
Yeah. Well, first off, I feel truly sorry for them. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I really, I do. And I get it. And it is easy, but like, we've talked about this. You've had posts about this. Like, and it's basically, kind of referencing what we talked about a little earlier. Like, if you tell your brain to look for something, it's obedient. It is going to do it. And so when somebody is being quote unquote pragmatic and looking to confirm themselves and looking to, this is only happening because I did this and this and this, that is exactly what they are going to see. And so to me, I like, okay, you're welcome. You are welcome to keep that belief. Absolutely. If that's where you want to start and end things, if everything that you are going for, everything you're chasing, you are going to do 100% by yourself, you are entitled to do that. But what would happen if we just said, okay, I'm going to continue all these things. I'm very clear on what I need to do to be successful, right? Like we both have these, the book thing going on right now. I'm very clear on I need to show up. I need to write down 1,000 words a day. I need to, all those processes. I'm going to need to do all that. But in addition to all of that, because I am working my ass off with all those things, I am also going to envision it already happening. Like it's already there. I already have this thing in front of me. And I'm going to pray for it because why not? Like what good could that do? Conversations with God are never a bad thing. And I'm going to think about something that you just said. What would it feel like what is the main goal of that thing? Okay, well, it's to help people. I want to help women heal their bodies. I want to help women feel amazing in their skin. What would it feel like to be in a position to do that and allow myself to think about it? So to that pragmatic person, I would say, well, how do you know what you want if you can't even think about, well, what it feels like? And I feel like that kind of stumps them up because they obviously, you wouldn't be chasing after something if you didn't think it felt a certain way, right? Like, and so
Absolutely.
it just all circles back to the beginning of like, okay, well, then why are you going for this? Well, because it would, okay, well, what does it feel like? Like, I don't know. I feel like there's no other way but to get your body involved into it.
And honestly, it's just so much more fun to be miracle minded. Like, it's so much fun to be open to the magic of the universe. And just, even if you're not sure, even if you're on that like teeter of like, I really want to believe in this, but I
Hmm.
don't know. I think just saying, I'm open to be willing to believe in it. I'm open to inviting in some magic into my world. And I think even if you're half there, you'll still start to see some of it. You'll still start to see moments, and I
Yeah.
absolutely love what you were talking about with just that feeling. So I'm not a super visual person. It isn't easy for me to envision things in my head. I read somewhere the other day that some people like simply do not have they'll tap into a feeling of what that could be like, but they can't envision it.
Yeah.
So anyway, but we were just talking about the houses, and this house that I'm currently living in, I used to come down years before I moved here, and I
Hmm.
used to sit in this model home. Every time I came down, I would come visit this model home, because they had a model right in the front,
Hmm.
of this same house. And so I would go sit in the model home, and I would just sit on the couch, and I would go, like, lay on the bed, and I was probably there way too long every single time I was there, but I would just feel like, "Oh my gosh, this house feels so amazing. It feels so amazing." Like, I could just see myself living here. And I mean, it's years later, but at the time, I mean, at that time when I first stepped foot in that model home and had that vision, I was so far from that being at all a possibility in my life. I think I had just looked into filing bankruptcy. I was so far from that being a possibility. And, luckily I never actually had to file bankruptcy. I began to manifest from that space of knowing that was a desire, and I didn't know how that would happen. And I think like the how piece is massive when it
Yeah.
comes to manifesting, especially when we're going from this is a goal, this is something I desire in my life, and this is where my reality sits. My reality was that I was struggling financially. I was in between, just starting a brand new business. My husband was in between a business that had kind of tanked and trying to find something new. Like, it was not something that would have made sense at all for that time period
Yeah.
in my life.
I have to. I'm like tripping out because our stories are so fucking similar. It's crazy to me. My house, same, not same, but very, very similar. I was 18 years old. I was pregnant. I was at the time in school, but not going because I felt I was just such a mess and had my shit just, I was a teenager having a child, like, so you can imagine the psychological stress I was under. I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back, I can see myself, with kindness and in a different light. But I would literally drive through this neighborhood in my broken down car, completely broke, with no life plan, no outlook, wondering what the fuck I was going to be doing, how I was going to manage this, situation I was hurled into. And I was literally skipping class. I would do it because I couldn't even concentrate in class. I just felt so out of touch with reality. And I would just drive. I would drive in circles in this neighborhood and look at the homes and just think, oh my God, these people must have their lives together. What would it be like to own a house like that? What do their families look like? Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to raise a child in a neighborhood like this and give them a life like this. And I would just literally just look at the architecture and look at the homes and imagine what the life would be like there, thinking this will never be available to me. And I truthfully, I mean, I never forgot that period of time. That was an extraordinarily powerful period of time, but also a dark period of time for me.
Right.
But
Right.
like, and it didn't even dawn on me until I was in this house, bringing home another baby, because same thing. And it just, I'm driving home one day and I was like, oh my God. Like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is the house I never thought I would have. This is the life I never thought I'd be able to provide my family with, and the security and all those dreams I would think about. And it's like, but you're right. I was so at the time disconnected from my picture was so bleak. And I was not a person who could ever put myself in a house like this. I was not the person who did those type of things, I feel like. But as soon as I started to be that person, it was like, I, the universe had nodded me back, or had tipped me back, and like, here you go. There it is. This is the life you've always wanted. Like, here you go. And I understand to some people that might sound like very outlandish or silly or stupid, or like the two things aren't related. And I know you'll understand this. I can tell you with every fiber of my being, I put myself into this house, and I did it all the way back then. And I needed to catch up with what the universe had in store for me, right? Like, I needed to believe myself a person who was capable of doing these things that were able to afford me a life to be here, right? Like,
Absolutely.
it
And I think that
and it
inner
took
work,
years, but it's there.
yes, that inner work is not to be underestimated. It's just not to be underestimated. And sitting in this house right now, like
Mhm.
as we talk, it's just such a good reminder that you absolutely cannot look at your present circumstances as evidence of what you can have or
Oh
can
yeah.
be or can do. And I think if there's anything you hear in this podcast today, it's that you do not have to be, do, or have the things that you desire already. You don't have to be them. You don't even have to know how to get them, but you do have to begin to be willing to believe that they're possible for you. And I even look at just even the difference between living in New York and living here. I did a lot of internal work when I got here. I was really shut off. I didn't have
Mhm.
many friends. Like, I didn't have my office. Like, there was a lot of things that I was not sure about, and it forced a lot of internal work. We
Mhm.
didn't just move into this house when we came down. We lived in a townhouse, and then, ended up getting the opportunity to build this. But like, the thing is that I still do the same businesses that I did in New York, but the amount of like financial abundance I've acquired from those businesses is
Mhm.
so significantly different. And I mean, if you follow me on Instagram, I don't really promote my stuff. Like
No, you don't.
like I'm not, that's not, marketing is a strength I'm improving,
Mhm.
or is a something I'm improving, but um it's not that I did anything necessarily different to create the abundance, other than deciding that I get to have those things, that I get to experience those things, that I'm not an exception to the rule, that I am part of the rule of the universe, that I get to be supported by the universe, that it's not, there's no evidence that needs to say that I can't have, be, or do the things I desire, unless I decide that it is, or
Right.
that I decide that block gets to be there. And so doing that internal work of just asking yourself those questions of, what is it, do I believe I can have this? If the answer is no, what's underneath that?
Mhm.
What
Where
do
did
I
that
believe?
come from?
Where did it come from? Asking yourself those questions to dive deeper into that, because like I said, you and I are both sitting in situations vastly different from where we started when we envisioned them. And honestly, I swear to you, I think the thing that really, really changed for me was I started reading The Secret by Rhonda Burns.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was like my intro to manifestation. That was my intro when we were in total debt and despair financially, to begin to even just start manifesting checks in the mail.
yeah. Yeah, seeing it, it's I still to this day, like if I find money, like a penny on the street, like I repeat in my head, like money comes to me effortlessly. Like it's just,
Yes.
creating those processes and like uh, I mean, something that I've said to anybody I've ever worked with in, I'm always dealing from like the health perspective, but this applies hugely to what we're talking about. It's just the idea that where you are is not who you are unless you make that your story. Like, which I feel like we both probably at different times like made that I'm an 18-year-old single mom, I'm a loser, I'm a dropout, I'm like, I made where I was who I was. And then I started to realize I can choose differently. If I put myself here, I can get myself out of here. What does that look like? And like, we keep saying like getting I'm like you. I have no idea what my future looks like. I can't visualize that, but I know how I want to feel. I can feel things in my bones. And so just leaning into what does that feel like? Well, what can give me that feeling? Like what type of person do I need to be to feel like that when I go to bed each night? And just kind of, leaning in. And let me be clear, I'm by no means like I don't feel like I'm done. And I don't feel like I'm, like the picture of the pinnacle of success or anything like that. I don't think that's what either one of us are saying, but it's just saying like situations can drastically change if we open ourselves up to the possibility of them drastically changing.
And overnight. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a process. Like, there isn't this big, it doesn't have to be a huge gap of time between you and what you desire. It can happen like that. You can get an opportunity that just shifts things around. You can have somebody approach you in a grocery store and make an offer to you. Like, there are
Yeah.
so, and that's when we kind of circle back to possibility, right? Is
Yeah.
if we open up to the universe and we say, not do I have to figure out how this has to happen for me, but that I choose to believe it can or will, um, then we start to allow those possibilities to find us.
Yeah.
And then we can take the inspired action as we feel called to do. But when we start to come back to those stories and we start to come back and claim some shit for ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I'm so similar in that like I don't ask for specific things because I don't know what that looks like and I don't want to limit myself. I just always ask for, please allow me to live my soul purpose. Please allow me to live my highest calling. Please allow me to be a helper. Please allow my message to help whoever it needs to help. Like all of those things. I'm not specifically saying let me become XYZ. I'm saying help me. I can't imagine what my ideal future is, but I know the universe has that in store for me. So just help me see it. And then my only job is like what you're saying, that inspired action. Okay, well, I know I need to be a type of person who, gets my work done. I need to be a type of person who I get to bed early. I need to eat a certain way because I need to take care of myself. I need to be able to thrive. I need to be optimal, healthy wise, because if my body's not optimal, neither will be my mind be. And like all of those things, I feel like perfectly fall into place when you start, like you said, calling in the idea that maybe there's a little magic out there. Maybe that, there's possibilities that we could just be given if we can position ourselves in a place of openness, of a place of saying like I can do this. I can handle what you have in store for me, you being the universe. And here, let me show you because look at me following through with all of these things that would allow these cool things to keep happening.
I love this conversation. This conversation is so good. And I think it's going to speak to so many people. And I love all of that. And, just coming back to, you don't have to decide how that has to happen, but decide who you need to manifest yourself to be to work towards becoming that. So your action doesn't have to be massive and big. I mean, it can be, it absolutely can be, but if we just start with the belief that, when you walk into the gym, I'm a healthy person, man, my workouts just get 10 times the results every time. It's crazy. Like I
Yeah.
just feel so strong during them. I feel so empowered during them. Like I just feel so fit and good when I'm done. And one of my favorite, and this is like something I tell people all the time, I have two ways of manifesting money that I just freaking swear by. One is I have a deep belief that just overflow is normal for me. Everything I desire is in overflow, and that's just my normal. The second one is that every time I pay anything, I say everything I spend comes back to me tenfold.
Mm.
everything I put out, I don't even have to worry about it going. It's going to come back, and it's going to come back times 10.
That's amazing.
It's like making a donation to the universe, and the universe just
Yeah.
pays it right back. Like,
Yeah.
it's immediate. So I swear by those things of finding those little phrases that allow you to loosen up your grip on things, that allow you to be a better version of yourself and manifest that better version of yourself. Because, like I said, from our stories, like, and I hope that's inspiring, because I'll tell you, the place I was at 5, 6, 7 years ago was nowhere near the person I am. Like, I just can't even imagine.
Same here. I'm a different person. I am a different person.
Entirely.
Yes. And here's something for those pragmatic people who hear what you just said and think bullshit, like whatever. Think about your past, because this is something that helped me. Like, when I was fearful of, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to pay this. I'm not going to, all those stories that are easy to spiral with, just remembering I've always been support. I've always had enough, right? Like,
It's always worked out.
Even in the worst times, when things were the bleakest, I've always had enough. I've always been provided for. I've always been cared for. It's always worked out. And has it worked out amazingly every single time? No, but it worked out. And so it's like just keeping that like reminder to yourself, like you're always supported. Ask for that help. Like, ask for that, be willing to like imagine something different. But if that's too much of a gap for you, or if you're too quote unquote like realistic to think that way, you can't deny that you've made it through thus far, right? So like it's just, I don't know. I really can't imagine living in that like closed-minded place anymore, but I did for years. It's, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like but it's just like I can't, I'm not even willing to entertain it anymore, because I know what that feels like, and I'm sure you can agree. The opposite is much better.
It is. It's way easier. It feels way lighter, and it just feels like, now when I have an issue come up, I might start that spiral of like, oh shit, what the fuck am I gonna do with this?
Yeah.
Like, like I
Yeah,
might start that, but
absolutely.
most of the time, I would say 9 times out of 10, I'm able to say, whoa, not what I want to manifest. What would work out in my favor here? What would help me out here if it went this way? And I start to begin to connect with the manifestation. And that's how I problem solve 90% of the time, because that leads me to an inspired action that allows me to take a step that usually allows things to kind of work themselves out.
Right. Like, Chris, I'm a gym owner from in 2020. We were shut down for 8 months of the year
Yep.
with zero
Ugh.
income. Like, it was easy to hear those stories and hear those, like, and I had to, talk about a relearning of lessons, but I just needed to keep telling myself, I am always supported. I am always supported. I am always going to be taken care of. And like, I could not entertain the opposite, because the opposite was so bleak. Why would I want to do that to myself in an already stressful time? And like, am I can be realistic. Did that impact my business? Absolutely. But it could have been a lot worse if I was going to spiral with it. If, like, it just couldn't, that couldn't happen. We needed to make the best of these situations and, think about things. And I truly believe we're on the other side of it, because my husband and I were able to just say, we're going to be fine. There's no other option, right? Like, just having that firm belief of I am always supported. And I feel like that works for everything. Just reminding in any situation for anybody, I'm always supported. Let that be a mantra. You'll believe it after a period of time, right? The universe will confirm it for you. And it just makes everything so much easier.
I also love the just the affirmation, everything is always working out for me.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
is another like favorite of mine. I definitely love feeling supported. But I also just find like, if I start to worry about something, everything's always working out. Like, why would I need to worry about this?
Yeah.
That's like so silly. Why would I need to waste my time and energy when I could be having fun with my kids, or
Mm-hmm.
doing something fun for myself, or whatever the case might be? I don't need to worry about this, because everything literally always works out for me. I don't even have to like touch it. I don't have to do anything with it. And so, your power is really that coming back to the trust and coming back to that internal voice of what am I telling myself about this situation, about myself in this situation, and what would I rather believe?
Yeah. What do I need right now? What do I need? And you're like you said, you're probably going to hear, well, I need to get my mind off things. I need to go play with my kids. I need to go for a quick run. I need to turn on Netflix and disconnect because I'm overwhelmed or whatever that may be. I'm supported. What do I need? Everything works out for me. What do I, and just allow, yeah, be open to allowing the universe to do what it's meant to do.
And what it's best at. The
Yeah.
universe, the universe is best at guiding you, helping you, supporting you, and you wouldn't believe how fast that can happen. And so if you're not sure, if you're wanting to play, invite the universe in to support you, and invite the universe. I always say, make it big. Make it big. I need to believe. And I just
Mhm.
believe that the universe is always looking for an opportunity to support us, and always looking for an opportunity to show up in a way that allows you to deepen that connection and belief. So if you're not sure, ask for help, ask for them to make it big for you, whatever you believe in, whatever connects for you, but just say, make it big. Correct. In, a church I go to, they say, correct my unbelief,
Ooh,
like correct
that's
my
good.
unbelief.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just as powerful. But, I think, like I said, this has been an incredible conversation. And I hope the people who are working towards their next step are identifying all of those things within them, allowing in that universe support and inspired action. Because as Heather and I just talked about, like, we're both evidence, and maybe we don't have all of our shit together all the time, but we do have some of those things where we've moved from a type of person we used to be into a whole different energy. And like I said, whether that is external, the internal shit is good.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the internal shit will make all the external stuff like work. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And it just all comes down to, like you said, that belief that it's fine, and it will be, or better than fine. Go big with it, because fine ain't so fine. I would take amazing, please. Right.
Incredible, amazing,
Uh-huh.
magnificent, awesome, better than expected, all the above.
Yeah.
Awesome, Heather. Well, thank you again for joining me. I love, love, love having you on, and I love our conversations.
Thanks.
Make sure to go follow Heather. Where can they find you?
Or just Heather Mayo, Maio, Heather period Mayo, right on Instagram.
And you have a new program out. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So it's basically in kind of unlearning our relationship with kind of diets and diet culture, but with an awareness, like, a lot of us do want to make changes to how we interact with our physical being, right? Like, we want to figure out how to better support ourselves, how to better nourish ourselves, better care for ourselves. But we're also aware, or at least hopefully we're aware, that, like, restricting ourselves never fucking works, right? That does not work. If it worked, we wouldn't be going back to the same programs and protocols over and over and over. So I created this program of, things can live happily together. We can be aware that we need to make changes to our diet, changes to our movement, changes to whatever, but, our nutrition. And we want to do so in a way that supports our being, that supports our development, that supports our growth, that doesn't diminish us and, beat us into submission, but really allows us to create new habits, create new processes, and just treat our bodies differently. And, because I am who I am, I'm sure your listeners have already figured out, it goes a hell of a lot deeper than the foods on our plate. We talk a lot about, spiritual practices and manifesting and habit formation and, looking at shadow work, because I feel like a lot of us, we manifest our traumas into how we treat our bodies. And so unpacking all of that stuff. So yeah, it's a lot. It's like, I think it's like over 19 hours of, I say lectures, but they can be listened to as podcasts or whatever. And just to help people kind of unlearn that negative way of treating ourselves, and how to learn how to support themselves to allow themselves to thrive. Because I just truly believe once we figure out how to treat our bodies with kindness, we show up in the world as different people. It makes our job here on earth so much easier when we know how to effortlessly nourish and support our physical beings. Like, I feel like, again, that comes back to the manifestation practice. When we know how to be good to ourselves, that is a huge, huge white, signal to the universe saying, I'm ready. Let's go. Look at me. I'm treating my body well. I am, taking care of this vessel that I have been given. So now I have room for more. And I just think that's really cool when we can get to that place.
It sounds amazing. So make sure you guys grab that. And you can find that through your Instagram, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So connect with Heather, follow her, get signed up for this. It sounds like an absolutely life-changing, all the way around holistically program. So thanks again, Heather, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Your Soul book and podcast. Take a moment to book a one-on-one session with me or purchase my trainings at NicholeEaton.com. Join the Rock Your Soul Facebook group or follow me on Instagram at NicholeEaton.xo. And if you loved this podcast, don't forget to share it. Thank you.